The sun was dipping low when I rolled into the only gas station in Hollow Creek, a squat, weather-worn building with flickering neon that buzzed like an angry wasp. The place looked as if it hadn't seen a proper renovation in decades. Crawling up the pumps, windows filmed with grime, a cracked sign swinging in the wind. I stepped out of the car and caught the faint tang of something metallic in the air, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. At first, I thought it might be the smell of old machinery, but as I walked toward the door, I noticed dark stains on the concrete. They weren't the bright red of fresh blood, but a dried, rusty brown that had seeped into the cracks and stayed there, as if time itself couldn't wash them away. Inside, the station was dim, lit only by a single buzzing bulb overhead. Shelves were dusty, stocked with faded labels and expired snacks that looked like they belonged in a museum rather than a store. The air was heavy, stale, and silent except for the faint hum of the cooler in the corner. Behind the counter sat an old man, skin paper thin and pale. Eyes milky white, like cataracts had long since stolen his sight, though I could feel them, tracking me the moment I stepped in. He didn't greet me, didn't ask if I needed help. He just stared with a strange intensity, like he was studying the shape of my face, committing it to memory. I mumbled something about filling up my tank, my voice sounding too loud in the suffocating quiet. That's when he spoke, his voice low and rasping, each word scraping out like something being dragged across stone. He asked if I was just passing through, and when I said yes, his expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. It was half warning, half grim satisfaction as his lips curled ever so slightly, and he told me not to go near the creek that night. As darkness swallowed the motel room whole, a strange and unsettling noise pulled me from restless sleep. It wasn't the usual creaks or groans of an old building settling in the cold. No, this sound was wetter-like, something heavy being dragged slowly across the floor, leaving a wet, sticky trail behind it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached for my phone, switching on the flashlight with trembling hands. The beam cut through the thick darkness of the hallway just outside my door. At first, I saw nothing but the faded wallpaper peeling at the edges and the cracked linoleum floor. Then, out of the corner of my eye, movement caught my attention. At the far end of the hallway, a figure was crawling on all fours. It moved jerkily, its limbs bending at unnatural angles as if its joints had been twisted and frozen wrong. The thing's skin was pale, stretched tight over bones that clicked faintly with each movement, and patches of flesh seemed to hang loose or were missing altogether, revealing raw muscle and bone beneath. Its head swung around slowly, unhuman, yet deeply wrong. Half of its face was missing, jawbone exposed and hanging loosely, teeth glinting in the faint light like the edge of a broken blade. But the eyes were what froze me, the milky, vacant orbs staring directly at me with an unsettling intelligence. Like it knew exactly what I was thinking without warning. It grinned, revealing sharp, uneven teeth smeared with something dark and sticky. Then, despite its twisted limbs and grotesque form, it lunged forward with a speed that defied its appearance. My breath caught in my throat as it scrambled closer, nails scraping against the worn floor, and I slammed the door shut just in time. The dragging noise stopped immediately, replaced by heavy thuds pounding against the door, wet, slapping sounds that sent a chill racing down my spine. I pressed my ear against the wood, hearing low, guttural whispers slipping through the cracks, calling my name over and over. The next morning, bleary-eyed and shaken, I knew I had to get out of Hollow Creek. As fast as possible, my body still trembled from the previous night's encounter, and the oppressive silence of the town made every step feel heavier. I went outside, hoping the sun would burn away some of the darkness that clung to the air. I walked toward my car, but the engine refused to turn over no matter how many times I tried. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, then died altogether. Panic curled in my stomach as I reached for my phone. No signal. I was completely cut off. I had no choice but to follow the main road out of town on foot, hoping to find help or at least a phone signal somewhere down the line. The air was crisp and cold, and the sky hung low and gray, thick with heavy clouds that seemed to press down on the earth. As I walked, the trees grew denser, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes like the gnarled fingers of ancient witches. The road curved and dipped, leading me inevitably toward the creek I'd been warned about. When I reached the bank, the water stretched out before me like a sheet of black glass, perfectly still and impossibly dark. The silence here was almost suffocating. I bent down to peer into the water, trying to see what lay beneath the surface, when my eyes caught something pale moving just beneath. At first, I thought it might be debris, branches, or leaves, but then shapes started to take form. Faces, dozens of faces, floating slowly in the murky depths, their expressions twisted in eternal agony, drawn by a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. I stepped closer to the edge, the damp earth soft beneath my feet. Suddenly, the water erupted. Cold, clammy hands burst from the creek, grabbing at my ankles with a ferocity that made me stumble backward. I fell hard onto the muddy bank, my heart pounding wildly as the hands pulled me toward the water's edge. The smell hit me, then a rancid, sickly stench of decay and rot that clawed its way into my nose and throat. I tried to scramble away, but more hands surfaced, grasping at my clothes and skin. When my face broke the surface of the creek, the world underwater was a nightmare come to life. All around me were the bodies broken, torn apart, some missing limbs, others sliced open with their insides spilling like grotesque ribbons floating in the water. One woman's face was nearly peeled away, her skull visible through ragged strips of flesh. Teeth glinted where her lips should have been, frozen in a silent scream. The water rippled as the corpses writhed, their empty eyes locking on mine, with a hunger that sent a cold shudder down my spine. Their cold, bony fingers clawed at me, raking deep, painful scratches across my arms and chest. I felt warm blood drip into the freezing water, mixing with the dark, oily stains that floated around me like ink. Then one of the corpses, a man whose jaw had been ripped away, sank his exposed gums into my shoulder, gnawing with a grotesque hunger that blurred the line between pain and terror. Desperation gave me strength. I kicked and thrashed, breaking free from their grip. But beneath me, something huge stirred in the depths, moving slow and deliberate, a monstrous shadow lurking just out of reach. The shadow lurking beneath the water was unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined. It moved with a terrifying grace despite its monstrous size, gliding through the black depths like a predator that had been waiting patiently for decades. Its skin was pale gray, stretched tight and slick, almost translucent, revealing grotesque shapes beneath the surface. As it rose slowly toward me, I could see its limbs were long and twisted, with joints bending in impossible directions, like a nightmare version of a human skeleton come to life. The creature's torso split open down the middle in a jagged, gaping maw lined with rows of sharp, bone-like teeth where a stomach should have been. Inside that terrible cavity were the remains of others' ribs, skull fragments, and pieces of torn flesh, still glistening wet and dripping with dark viscous fluido. The whole sight was a horrifying reminder of what awaited anyone who dared come too close to the creek. Its face was the most horrifying part of all. It wore a mask made of human skin, crudely sewn together from patches of different faces. Eyes blinked independently at different angles, some wide with terror, others dull and lifeless. Multiple mouths opened and closed, whispering unintelligible sounds all at once, like a chorus of voices trapped within a single body. I could feel its terrible hunger as it reached out. Long fingers curled into hooks that tore into my side with a brutal force. Pain exploded through me, and I tasted blood in my mouth as the water around me turned red. My vision blurred as waves of nausea and panic washed over me. But I fought to stay conscious. The creature dragged me closer to that horrifying maw. The airless pressure of the water tightening around me, the whispers grew louder, echoing inside my head, promising release and eternal belonging. I could feel my own skin starting to pale and my nails turning dark, the changes creeping through me like a cold poison dot. Then, in the depths of that dark abyss, I understood I wasn't just facing a monster. I was becoming part of the nightmare itself. A new face in the water, a fresh set of hands to drag the next victim down. Desperation surged through me, and I fought against the creature's grip with everything I had, kicking and thrashing, trying to break free before the darkness swallowed me whole. I woke gasping on the muddy bank, coughing up thick, bitter water mixed with blood. Every muscle in my body ached as if I'd been dragged through hell itself. I tried to sit up, but a strange weakness pinned me down, and my hands trembled uncontrollably. When I looked down, the color drained from my skin, replaced by a pale, sickly hue that made me look more corpse than living. My nails had darkened into a black, brittle shell, cracking at the edges, reaching for a nearby puddle. I stared into the murky reflection, and what I saw froze my blood colder than the creek ever could. My eyes no longer held the warm brown they always had. Instead, they were milky white, glazed over like the cataract-ridden gaze of the old man at the gas station. A creeping horror settled in my chest as I realized I was no longer fully human. Behind me, the faint sound of dragging returned, slow and deliberate, like something heavy being pulled across the ground. I turned slowly, heart pounding wildly, to see the gas station man standing there, a cruel smile twisting his thin lips. His eyes, too, were that same ghostly white, and his presence seemed to pull the darkness closer, thickening the air around us. "Welcome home," he whispered, voice like dry leaves rustling in a dead forest. From the water's edge, pale, skeletal hands emerged, reaching out toward me with desperate, clawing fingers. There was no fight left in Minot anymore. As the cold hands closed around my arms and pulled me toward the creek's black surface, I felt a terrifying calm wash over me, as if I was slipping into a new existence, one neither fully alive nor truly dead. Something inside me broke and reshaped, joining the endless, twisted chorus that haunted Hollow Creek. The transformation was complete.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.